Okay, YouTube, this is Bobby with DMH, and I'm just going to explain a little bit about the process of prepping a piece before I color it. So I don't have a fancy scanner or anything, I have a regular scanner. So I have two halves that I scan in. I scan in the top half, and then I scan in the bottom half. And then I bring them both into a new file and combine the pieces, and I have to zoom in and line up and get it really as close as I can. It's hard to be exact. And then once I get the middle bit kind of lined up, then I work from left to right, tightening up the lines along the crease so that they are not visible, which is what I'm doing here. This is sped up 500%, so it seems like I'm really efficient and know what I'm doing, but I'm not efficient at all, and it takes forever. There's probably an easier way to do it. If you're watching this and you think I'm an idiot, then the chances is you're right. It's just the only way I know. So once again, working along the same lines. This is a piece that I'm doing for my daughter for her birthday. She's a big Soundwave fan, so I try to really tighten this one up the best I can. Not that I don't tighten everybody's stuff up, but you know, it's my kid, so I got a little extra TLC. And the more far from center, further from center, left or right that I get, the more dramatic the difference in lines become. So it takes a little bit more work. So now I start with a rat bat. I start from the top and kind of work my way down. And basically, like I use a straight edge. Ever since I did a piece of the protective odds for Justin from Good Morning Cybertron, I use a straight edge now. He was the first guy to actually pay for Transformer work of mine, so I wanted to make sure it was the best that it could be. And before I used to kind of freehand it, and I had a little bit of, I don't know, creative vanity of it's all me. It's nothing fake about it. But as soon as somebody started paying for it, I was like, well, it doesn't matter if it's me or not. It's got to look the best it can. So I started using a straight edge. And the problem with the straight edge and using inks, which is what I do, I go from pencil to ink to Photoshop colors, is that it bleeds. The ink bleeds slightly. Even if you're being really controlled with it. So it creates these little bleed over lines, and sometimes if I move the straight edge too quickly, it smears, and so on and so forth. So it creates these little errors that aren't terrible, but the more you have of them, the more obvious it becomes that it's full of mistakes, and it's still full of mistakes. And the further I go with this, the lazier I kind of get with it. So like right now with this rat bat, I'm all over it. I'm tightening up every line, but by the time I get to the end, I'm like, oh, that won't do. It's just because it takes a long time to do when I start getting tired. I probably should just stop when I start feeling that way, but I don't. And so, at any rate, this helps clean up, the line work. Like if you look at some professional people like Don Figueroa and Pat Lee, love him or hate him, I think he's incredible, but love or hate him, Pat Lee's work, like their line work is so tight, and it's probably because they're doing a lot of the drawing of it in Photoshop, initially, so they're manipulating and extrapolating, perfect squares, whereas I'm doing it by hand because I'm just not that efficient in Photoshop. Here actually is a mistake. There's a lot of times that I end up highlighting a piece and then clicking on something outside of Photoshop, and it thinks I want to export it, and I don't, and then it confuses Photoshop as to what I want to do because the file's so big. I scan in at 600 resolution. That's Tara Patrick, I think, behind me. It's a little after work inspiration, I guess. Keeps me going, you know what I mean? So anyway, it thinks I want to export it, and since the file's so big, it has a hard time exporting it. But it's not what I want to do in the first place, but it just slows down the process. So basically, I know it, the closer I zoom in, the more confusing it kind of becomes. But you know, I drew it and I inked it, so I'm very familiar with it, and I know where I am, even though it's zoomed in pretty closely. So I just kind of move around. I know it's a bit confusing, but spending the amount of time that I spend on the pencil work and the inks, then it's, every little line kind of makes sense. Now, when I'm in pencils, it's a bloody mess. Like it's a nightmare. And when I go in and ink it, a lot of times the mistakes that I make in inking is because I just can't tell which pencil line is the right one. Because you can only erase so much before it just becomes a mess. And like those tight lines there, those little lines, like that's just good groundwork for a lot of mistakes when you're inking something. And I'm rarely happy with anything I do, exceptionally happy anyway, but I was pretty happy with this, but there's a couple mistakes that I've noticed now that are kind of unfixable at this point. One of which I come from the school of Transformer thought that it should be small heads, big shins, to always make it look like you're on the ground looking at them, and that they're larger than life, and I'm not entirely happy with the shins on this, on Soundwave especially. I just feel like they're a little small. It makes it start looking a little action figure-ish when everything's in perfect perspective as opposed to exaggerated. I have a hard time with the cylinders. Like keeping the boxes is not too difficult. The cylinders are a little bit harder to keep in perspective. It's Transformers. Drawing Transformers is a little easier because it's all like just box on top of box on top of box. Inside of square, inside of box, on top of box. But at the same time, it makes it more difficult in a way too, because your natural mind is just used to knowing what a perfect square looks like. So when it's out of sync and when the perspective's out of sync, you instantly realize it. You can't trick the brain, I guess. A lot of this here on the gun is just mistakes, because I did a lot of this freehand because I didn't want it to look perfect. The gun, I don't know. Wanted it to look like it had been used and banged around and hit against walls and dinged up, and so I didn't use a lot of perfect lines. A lot of times here with this, taking out the big parts of the sides and everything, I do this because you never realize just how many smudges and everything you get. So if I just have like big white areas, I just delete them and I keep a layer underneath of just solid white. Here actually on the gun, I drew the missile a little off center, like the barrel of the gun. So I'm going in now and cutting out the barrel and just moving it slightly over. It's a cheat. It's absolutely a cheat, but it's nice to have that ability to do that in Photoshop. So I just moved it over, and then I'm kind of putting the perspective of the spines of the fins, or whatever you want to call it, of the Stegosaurus, the Slugfest, behind it. And I have to keep kind of backing out and going back in to keep perspective, because it's hard to keep perspective when you're working so closely, or when you're working so far away. So that's what's kind of going on there. But it's nice to be able to do that, because I drew the tip of the barrel of the missile, or the whatever you want to call it, the laser gun, or whatever it is. I'm sure there's some Transformer geek that will correct me on the name of it, but and I really liked the way it looked. Thought I did it, kind of nailed it, but then when I backed out and saw it, I was like, oh, well, it's completely off center. So it's nice to be able to go in and fix that at this point. Just get, have the luxury of doing that. If you were to look over to the right, I had a hard time keeping perspective of there's like, obviously if you look at Soundwave's chest, there's two planes, or three planes. There's like the tape player in the front, and then the base, and then the back part, and I had a hard time keeping track of the perspective, so I just left it out, and after I color it, I'll go back in and add some black lines. because then I had the the ability to play around with it. I was never happy with the little symbol I did on the chest, so I cut it out, put it on its own layer. I shrunk it and stretched it out, and then played with the alignment of it to kind of give it the look I wanted. Because when I drew it, it was just a little fat and stubby, so to speak. You can see the two differences of tone in the paper, and that's from the split from where the drawings are. The light of the scanner is hitting one differently than it's hitting the other. But eventually, I'll wash all that out with white, and you won't be able to tell the difference. Because basically, what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to get absolute black and white, and I'm trying to have the black lines, kind of stand on their own, so that I can lay the colors underneath them. Which is the whole reason why I'm doing this. Because I don't want to color over dirt, and I don't want to color over lines that should be black but are really just a shade of gray. Because when you put the ink to the paper, it's not absolute black; it's just like a really dark gray. So I'm trying to get rid of all the smudges and all that kind of stuff to isolate the black lines, so that I can darken them out to absolute black, and then wash the white out in the back. So it's absolute black and white, and I have an absolute black and white canvas to kind of work on to color, afterwards. I think that's going to end up being Frenzy. That's frenzied symbols on his chest. I didn't get the perspective quite right, and it's going to be one that kind of irritates me for life. I just couldn't quite track it down. I personally, Frenzy is red and black to me. Rumble is the blue. That's just, sorry. It's just how I grew up. I think it had to do with whether you were a toy fan first or a cartoon fan first. And I was a cartoon fan first, toy fan second. So Frenzy to me is black and red. I understand the counter argument, but that's just me. And now, I'm getting towards the end, and I'm starting to get tired and burned out of zooming in, zooming out, so a lot of lines are getting skipped over, or not seen, or passed up, or kind of given a pass, even though they shouldn't. But that's what happens. Get tired. Now, Slugfest, the Stegosaurus here, is an example of where I had a lot of pencil work, and the pencil work was so messy that I couldn't keep track of which line was which. So I ended up drawing extra lines that I'm looking at right now. I can tell with my thumb, oh, this isn't going to do. So I'm going to eventually cut out this line and this set of lines and rework it. Not so much there, but it's kind of an extension of the missile problem. But yeah, that's me trying to get a perspective. Sometimes when you back out enough, then you kind of get an idea of where the line should go. But when you're in there tight, you can't really see it. So this is me fixing those lines, and that's much better. And I'm not, I don't know. There's something narcissistic about kind of showing your work and how you do it and putting it on YouTube, but that's not really my angle. I'm only doing it because people have asked to kind of see the process. So that's me taking out that's me. I duplicate a black channel is what I do, and then I turn off the CMYK, the different colors, white out the CMYK so it's absolute white. And then I take the black copy, and I just adjust the levels, darken it up. And that's an absolute black and white drawing. Sorry about the quality of the video and all the scrolling letters. I'll get better with that, I promise. It's kind of goofy. But comment, subscribe. I got more stuff coming. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Take care.